All right, we're gonna give everyone just a second to get in here. I'm gonna get my screen ready to present. But yeah, go ahead and get settled in, and we will get started in just a moment here. Let me grab screen share. I want to show off this thing. Go. Cool. All right. Hopefully, it looks like you guys can see a big thing that says platform roadmap, and that will be good. I'm going to make sure I have the chat panel open, and we will go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone. If you're a repeat attender of this meeting, welcome back. You're going to see a couple minor updates to the next, 12 to 18 months roadmap that we've been talking about. But if this is your first time joining, also welcome. This is a great time for you to come see what Decisions is working on, what the product managers are focused on, what we're kind of looking at to release soon, and also have the space to ask any questions you may have. So if you have pressing needs or questions or something on this slide deck interests you, this is a great time to post them in the webinar chat or to post them in the Q&A panel. And I have several people here to help me answer those and make sure that I don't miss them. But without, other than that, we're going to spend maybe 30-ish minutes going through some roadmap items and some things we're excited about. And then we'll leave it open for some questions after that. So first and foremost, who's on the call here? You get me is the speaker today. I am Eric Wolmerink, if I haven't met you before. I head up the engines team. The engines team is our team that really heavily focuses on the core running product of Decisions. So the way that we're hosted, the way that all of our engines actually execute, the way that we are architected as a whole tech stack, right? All of that falls under my purview. And so a lot of what you'll see me talk about today is around the next major version of Decisions, which is the deployment server, or rather the complete ground up rewrite of the repository in order so that we can ship our code, really well across all of your environments and control all of that. So that is me. We also have Kirsten on the call. Kirsten heads up our UI designers team, which focuses on making sure that all of the pieces of building UI work really well. And she's been working really hard on a ton of new controls and functionality around our UI builders to make sure that you guys can just very quickly create modern looking, resizable, great forms. So she'll be here to answer any of those questions as well. We also have Josh. Josh is on the call. He heads up our integrations and AI teams, which again focuses on anything that is for us to connect to AI systems or for us to leverage them within our own platform, as well as all of those modules you see in the modules folder. So anything that connects to Salesforce or X12 or any of the other sort of I can't think of any. Wow, I'm blanking. There's hundreds of modules we have, but Josh is the one who heads up and makes sure that those things are updated and we keep adding new ones there. And last but not least, the man who's not on the call, Rohit. Rohit really cares about developers and the designer experience. So if you've noticed in the newer versions of version 9, there's a lot of updates to the debug experience in the workflow look and feel itself, a lot of the dialogues that pop up, really just getting an improved way for the people who actually build in Decisions to have a much faster, kind of more modern experience. That's Rohit. So you can send him kudos his way. But that's the current product management team, and we're here to answer any questions you may have. Now, again, since this is kind of an open webinar, if you have any specific questions or feedback on features or want to talk more about anything you see here, please, please, please let us know. We're more than happy to hop on calls, 10, 15, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever you need, but we'd love to get in touch with you and make sure that we can see or really just hear you out and see anything that you need. You'll also see a survey we send at the end of this. We do actually review that survey, and it does help us know whether or not these meetings are valuable to you. So when you get that, please take a moment. It takes maybe a minute or two just to fill that out. We review that, and it would help us tremendously. So that being said, I'll kind of dive into the presentation side of things. What is the team mission? What's the goal here? And it's been the same since the day we founded as a company, was it 14 years ago now? Which is we want to change the way programming works. We want to make sure that the people who have real world business problems and who understand business needs have the right set of tools to solve those problems, right? The gap between traditional software development and all the expertise and technical know-how that you have and the real business problems that organizations run into is a big gap. And the goal of Decisions is that we want to change the way we view and think about programming so that those two things are really cohesive and aligned together. And so everything you'll see in the roadmap is driving towards that. How do we make sure that the solutions you're building and the things you need to do so are really the right set of tools that you need? Now, if we haven't chatted in a while, all of 2024 was centered around the version 9 release. Version 9 was a big refactoring of our folder tree and our architecture there to make everything into their own auditable, independent projects. And so version 9 was a big kind of infrastructure change where the way that you build and conceptualize your work and decisions is now isolated into these projects. And then we spent the rest of the year really working heavily on making sure that that is a good experience for everyone and that that's rock solid. So 2024 was all V9, as well as working on some of those designer improvements. And then in 2025, we've really kicked both of the two of those things into high gear. We're taking projects and focusing now on the way you isolate and deploy these across multiple environments, and then taking those designer kind of improvements we made and again, ramping them up into high speed. Again, we have a whole UI building experience, flow building experiences, et cetera. So that's what you'll see throughout 2025 and into next year. And then just some recent information. If you haven't gotten to see some recent releases as of, I guess, a couple months ago, June and July, we'll be very quickly, I think in the next week, releasing version 9.14. But the latest releases that we have, you'll see a lot of things kind of centered around these teams, right? Like 9.11, we had a lot around the integrations, adding GraphQL and Parquet support as part of the 9.11 release. And 9.12, there's a number of updates to the flow designer kind of experience and the icon and the pathing that you can draw and the debug experience. And then some of the UI pieces I want to show off is when you're building forms and controls like advanced data grids, we have actually actions you can display there. When you build a form, you have drop downs the way that we have the item level descriptors there to improve the experience. And I have a couple screenshots to show about these because I think they're pretty neat. But these are some really good quality of life improvements, especially for end users and people who are in the UI of the tool a lot, that I think are really, really powerful and beneficial. So this first one here is one we've been asked for a while. It's where you can take actions for an advanced data grid on a form. If you're not familiar, the advanced data grid on the form is really just the way to get a report and a report style presentation of data on a form. And in there, we've added that if you have right click or entity actions on there, you actually can add those now as clickable icons, right? Just improving the way that you can run and execute these things, the way that you can kick them off, giving you better control over kind of the visual end user experience of working within the decisions platform. So that is added as of 9.12. Now 9.13, we've been mentioning Flex for a very long time, but Flex is now finally released as of 9.13. So if you install this, you're going to see it here. But what Flex finally is the way for our forms to properly scale and resize with, based on user kind of resizing control and experience or screen size to be a more kind of just be a seamless end user experience, right? When you can see in the kind of quick GIF that you're looking at, is that as the user is going in and clicking buttons and making choices and things are getting, hidden and shown, we're resizing the screen appropriately. And if they make their screen bigger, we're stacking them based on limits and restrictions you've set or making it smaller. This finally also gives us a ton of mobile capability as well around if someone's loading it on a really small screen, like a mobile phone, we'll be able to resize and show that form appropriately without you having to design 2 or 3 separate form experiences. So Flexbox is our way of saying, hey, there's now a much more, kind of advanced modern way to control the resizability and kind of scaling of your forms from within the decisions platform. That one, we could do a whole hour webinar on just this. So if you are a heavy forms user and this is exciting to you, again, let us know in the chat and email, and we're happy to hop on to talk about this more or show you some more. I just hopped on a call with a customer a few days ago that has built their first form in Flex Layout, and they could not stop singing about how great it was. So someone's using it, and it's pretty cool so far. And then freeze columns, just a fun little update. I think this is one of those things that you say, oh yeah, we should have done this years ago, but it's a fun addition, right? If you want to take a column in a report and freeze the first one because you have a really big wide report, lots of data, cool. You can go to in the report designer, click that, say this is frozen, and then have that be the frozen column as you slide across your reports. Just again, good little UI tweaks and improvements that kind of really help give our users just a better experience when they're looking at our UI pieces or building in our designers, those sorts of things. And then the last one, because we have a lot of people who leverage our drop-down control quite a bit and a lot of different use cases for it, this one here is really heavily driven towards getting better data in that drop-down control, like actually having a description kind of text in, you can see it in two examples here, one as grayed out text and one as the pink underlined text. But when you're clicking a drop-down item, especially from a piece of data that's complex, being able to show more information and descriptions about that is just exciting and fun and makes those things a lot easier to use. I see a question in the chat. Looks like Kirsten's frantically typing a response, but at freeze column, is that user selectable at runtime was the question. I think Kirsten's actually the
Uh,
perfect one to answer that. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, I'll come up. So it's not configurable at runtime
Mm.
yet. So that will be
Okay.
an enhancement that will be coming up soon. But if you do have the column reordering set to true, then you can move columns in and out of frozen sections. So that's how you can play
Cool.
with it at runtime.
Cool. Thank you, Kirsten. Appreciate that. And you're going to notice this actually, this is a side, I'm going to like quick side rabbit trail note here, is that a lot of our approach to releases has changed. Typically in the past, you'd see us like build up a really big feature and then do a big release for the one feature and then wait, several months and do it again. We're a lot more focused on kind of the 4-week release cycle where we're releasing things iteratively as they become available, right? So things like the freeze columns, we're going to release the first version of it and then iterate on it over time over the next several releases to add those sorts of additional capabilities, especially given your feedback. So just a little bit of a philosophical change in the way we do releases here. The only thing we're kind of holding back right now is the one I'm working on, which is deployment server. But again, I'll talk about that in just a moment. So yeah, looking at the next couple years, big picture stuff, what are we working on, right? So first and foremost, like I said, 2025 is as far as an R&D kind of road mapping perspective is mainly focused on deployment server. That's why it's kind of have it bolded at the top, right? Deployment server, we're spending a ton of time making sure that we rebuild from the ground up the way that you move your projects from one environment to another, as well as then how you can go audit, visualize, code review, pipeline these things out for to move them forward in a consistent and automated way. So I'll talk at length about that, but that's been the big R&D focus for 2025. And then in the releases side of things, you've seen we've been improving our health scores and the way that we visualize and present those to users, right? We put them inside the reports where you can see your list of items. In the designers themselves, you can get a live updating health score that's a summation of your best practices and whether or not you're following those. So that's been a big focus for this year. AI integrations and automations, we've done a ton of work around kind of getting AI off the ground here at Decisions. One thing we've done is we have now the chatbot you may have seen in the tool that can be driven by AI and give you quick suggestions or tell you which links to documents you need to go to. And again, there's a series of improvements we're working on there, as well as a whole suite of features that we're going to be releasing in bulk, which I'll talk about in just a moment. And then the flow designer refreshes and the kind of updating our UI designers to be more consistent is coming as well and is part of this year. Next year, we'll be continuing with deployment server. You'll see in a moment, this is actually a multi-phased approach for this. So probably at this point, we are at about phases 5 planned out throughout next year. But that'll be a big focus for next year, as well as a number of other things like getting our portal experience completely updated, right? We've talked about flows. We're working on rules next. We're going to be working throughout the rest of the portal there. And then things like being able to embed our designers really seamlessly in other systems, right? So if you need to take our designers and go embed them in your systems or your portals, we're going to make that a lot simpler and easier to use. That's a use case we see cropping up more and more. And then into 2027, as far as we can kind of forecast, Once deployment server kind of heavy lifting is done, we see that as a major architectural kind of differentiator for us, where the ability for us to create environments and destroy environments and manage your scaling of them and kind of keep them cost efficient will then lead us to do things with the environments themselves, like simplifying some of the experiences of creating and building stuff and decisions, right? So having a whole rule environment where everything is a lot kind of simpler and easier for people to just build out in is something we're going to be doing. Being able to automatically kick off flow executions or even the design experience of building and enhancing flows and rules, right? We're seeing some of this with the AI initiatives now, but if we can interrogate production data and understand how this rule is running in production and then spin up an environment and test a bunch of data against it, we could provide you with suggestions on how we can automatically improve your built projects, right? So that's a big long-term goal. We think we can get there. Pretty exciting. And kind of the big, I maybe should put this at the top. The big theme for that is as we grow further into the future, especially the next couple of years, we want to focus on more configuration and less development, right? So what I mean by that is I don't want you to spend all your time digging through the flow step toolbox to find that one step that works properly, right? I'd rather have you have a wizard experience where you flip on and off the features you care about and you click go and it's automatically up and running and deployed, right? Those are the types of things we're gearing towards in order to try to just improve the overall kind of return on our tool, right? When you need a project, we're going to make that, a lot faster. All right, no questions yet, but I am rambling quite a bit. No, we're good so far. All right. And then honing in on kind of the next 12 to 18 months, I've already mentioned some of these themes, so just make sure it's really clear. Number one, health and integrations, right? We want to make sure we're proactively understanding how you're building, what you're trying to build, whether or not it conforms to best practices, how you're connecting this to other systems. So all of that falls under the way that we really care. The one thing we care about is the health, how we're caring about you as your projects and builds grow, and then your integrations. We want to make sure that we're still the top of the line tool that lets you seamlessly connect to every other system. So that's a big focus. Number two, dev velocity. So all of the UI stuff that you've seen come out or that I showed is about improving the developer experience. At our core, like I said, if we want to change programming, we got to care about developers, specifically people in our tool day to day building your workflows out. So that's been a big theme for us. And then deployment. And I've talked at length about that without actually saying anything meaningful. So I'll just get to the deployment slides and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, here's a big scary chart. I'm not going to go into every single bullet point here, so don't worry, I won't bore you to death. But take a quick glance, see if anything, appears interesting or anything seems really fun here. But a couple of highlights, we're halfway through quarter three of this year. We've done a ton of releases specifically around kind of UI dev velocity stuff, and a lot under the covers with deployment server. So deployment being a major theme, we're going to start to MVP and beta test this stuff in the next month. And so I'll have a couple of notes for you guys to take away to think about there. But some of the other things you'll see here as Kirsten's team moves more towards a unified UI design experience, right? We're going to make the page designer WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get, so you could actually live build your pages. The way that you're building forms and pages, you'll start to see mold closer and closer together till eventually you could just have one UI building experience. Working on our rule engines and how those things are kind of presented and displayed to users, and then how you can automate the testing of those. You'll see a lot of these themes throughout here. And then one thing at the bottom that I have a couple slides to talk about as well is AI mass feature innovations. Like I said, we kind of been gearing up to kind of give a big push of AI features out, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a moment. So let me pause, see if there's any questions. There is not. Cool. I'm just going to assume that I'm just a great presenter that talks about everything perfectly with perfect clarity. So unless you have questions, then I'll just follow that assumption. So yes, let's talk deployment server. At least I'm going to talk about deployment server. What is deployment server, and what is the word we're using here? What are we talking about when we say this? So this is what we were calling the repository, but a completely rebuilt way to help you track, visualize, audit, manage, check the health of, code review work, right? So when people are building in decisions, how do we request the developer to do stuff? How do we track the developer's experience? How do we, integrate that with the next thing we're going to deploy up to production and release it? How do I audit and test everything all at once to make sure that those, everything's working the way I expect? All of that is deployment server, right? But it's also more. The next major function of deployment server is going to be controlling the environments themselves. And that's kind of the second line here, right? Is we want to make it a way for you to optimize and easily control the way that you turn on and off environments, the way you scale your environments, the way you co-locate them in big node clusters. So decisions deployment server will actually be the function that controls the environments themselves. And that's something we're really excited about as we come forth into there. So and that's kind of highlighted here in these three different focuses, right? First and foremost, the code shipping piece, moving a project from one to another, scheduling those things to happen on a regular basis, setting up windows of kind of approval that must occur. Right. All of this is really important for the developers themselves, the project managers, but we want to make the actual activity of moving your projects from one server to another really fast, really easy to visualize, which I know is some of the struggles that we have today. Again, the cloud infrastructure piece, this is for us to actually control the containers themselves. This is really important for like cloud ops IT people who are spending time turning on and off our servers, right? We'll be able to control that from the deployment server side, just freeing up the kind of the burden there. And all of this is under kind of focus number three, which is a lot of struggle we see today is that our environments and deployment practices are all isolated, right? There's no way to really understand from any single source of truth, what development activity is occurring while at the same time testing is occurring, while at the same time production data is running, right? Like I can go see those things, but they're all isolated and independent. So one major focus here is that we wanted to bring all of that together with this deployment server rewrite to make it that, single source of truth, single pane of glass view where you can get everything you care about your entire decisions infrastructure in one single location. And this is great. This is great for everyone, but specifically business owners, IT folks, minded folks, the people who really want to understand, like, hey, what is my decisions infrastructure doing? Who's using test? What's the current status of that? Okay, well, how does that relate to development server or to the development server that's going on? And you'll see a lot there. So just to make sure this is really clear, what is the repository versus what is the deployment server? Repository is just what we've called this in version 9 and sooner. And again, this is our current change management system, which really heavily focuses more on like the check-in, check-out concept, but without much governance around it and without really any great automation around this in order to, promote these things well or have proper kind of practices around them. And so deployment server is the upgrade to this. It's taking those concepts and actually putting really good enterprise level CI/CD stuff around them. So when it comes time to upgrade, you'll upgrade to V10, you'll upgrade the repository server, you'll see a big switch. It'll flash names over to deployment server, but that's just to make sure it's really clear. That's what we're talking about here. All right, now the fun stuff. So what does this mean for you? What are the phases of this and how does this impact you? So yeah, we split this up into smaller features. Like I said, we're not gonna wait till it's all done because that would take us through 2026. But we're gonna start releasing some of these early features. Again, we're gonna be beta testing this as soon as a couple weeks from now. So that's where we're in right now. We're in the core MVP phase, core architecture of the deployment server. And we're really heavily building out all of those primary features, all of the services and functions that do the deployment, all of the dependency checking and kind of overwrite utilities that we've had. We've rebuilt them so that your deployments are just fast, simple, easy to go. That MVP process is nearing an end, and like I said, we'll be taking kind of the ugly dev version of this, where we didn't really care much about UI, and slapping that together for a couple really early access alpha builds, and then leading into phase one, which is taking these concepts and really robustly building them out with good screens and good rules and access and permissions. And that will be our beta build that we'll be releasing in short order, I will say. The only note I'll say here is if you are interested in deployment server at all, or you want to get in on some of these early access builds or beta builds, let me know. email me after the call, email product management, post in the chat, and I'll follow up with you and show you some early prototypes and screens that we're working through. But that'll be phase one, is really all around the development experience, tracking developer work, creating stories to tie them to entities and decisions, having a proper code review where someone actually can see all the changes that, say, Josh made and compare them to production and approve or reject them. All of that practice around doing that and then moving that to a higher environment, adding those things to what we're calling a deployment package, and then shipping that package to other environments or pulling it down, scheduling that shipment out. That's all phase one, is getting your projects to move one environment to another. Phase two is going to be around then the testing side of this. And I think this is probably one of the coolest things we're doing, is at every point throughout your deployment practice, we're going to implement where we can automated testing and test suites where you can deploy and have these things run in parallel to your deployment practices. And what I mean by that is, imagine a world where every time, I make a change on the dev server and commit that up, we could automatically deploy that to a test server and run all of our unit tests, run a bunch of load tests with JMeter, and report the results back. So now every time I make a commit and a change to a flow, 2 minutes later, I'm going to get an email that says, hey, you've reduced the performance of this flow by 18%, and click here to see the results, right? That world where the connection between them and these automated testing things occur is soon. By the end of the year is our goal, to get some of these features rolled out to you. But that's what we mean by test suites, right? You can define what the load test capabilities are, what the unit tests are, and we're going to do acceptance tests where you can actually define click-through tests in the portal, and you'll be able to load that up like on a test server and click all the acceptance criteria in order to approve these stories. So implementing testing as part of your deployment practices will be part of phase two. And then this other idea of enrichment is we would love to enable the ability to connect your environments to let them talk to each other. So again, imagine a world where Josh is struggling to update a flow and he's building and he's testing and he's building and testing, but really he needs to know how this thing works in production. Well, if we've connected all of our environments, he could very easily pull up sample data sourced from production and run that data in his development environment, or just see the performance and history and statistics of the production flow while he's developing. So developers can make more intelligent choices. Like if I'm editing a rule that's run once a year, it's a low stakes rule, right? That's a low priority thing to fix. But if I'm editing a rule that's run 800 times a day, that's going to be meaningful for me as a developer, right? Just basic enrichment to make sure these servers talk is what phase two is all about. Phase three is more of that pipelining, which I talked about, and then starting to get our container processes in place. But the pipelining, what I mean by that is you could specify when you want to move something from one environment to another, each of the servers that are involved in that process, right? So I'm going to go from dev to automated test to user acceptance test to shadow to prod. I have 5 environments I want to move between. Well, you can set up this up as a pipeline and then tell your commits when to go based on business rules, right? So you can say, hey, on every commit, automatically load test. If the percentages don't drop by more than 1%, automatically put on testing server, and then wait for someone to right click and say approve, right? You get to configure what your deployment pipeline looks like and plug in either automated movement or manual approval at any of those gates. That's the pipeline, and that'll be phase three that we're really heavily focused on. And then phase four is then really doubling down on phase four is kind of happening right now, like it's happening in the background of all of this. But this is that using Kubernetes to actually control the environments themselves and say for example that automated test server you only turn on while you're running tests and then you turn it off, right? Deployment server can control that. It could see a commit come in, turn on the server, update it, run the tests, turn the server off, right? Like our control and ability to do that, we see as possible. And that's the next year stuff that we're looking for. Hmm. No questions. All right, cool. We'll wrap this up a little bit early then. Last thing I want to talk about, I'm going to steal a little bit of Josh's thunder here. He's really kind of been heads down hammering quite a bit here. But like I said, we've been laying the groundwork for a lot of AI features and decisions and making sure that we're just easy to connect to providers. We've been slowly adding things in like prompt management and decisions or model switching where you can switch between different AI vendors or models as steps in your workflow. But now we're going to be kind of like pulling the trigger on and releasing a bunch of kind of more in your face AI features, for lack of a better word to say this, right? But there's over 17 of them that we're targeting here, right? They're targeted around three areas. This will be in the decisions portal themselves. The first is generative, right? Like how do we leverage AI to actually help you build designer stuff, right? Build, add flow steps to forms, give you rule structures, as you give it some prompts, but actually how we create these things for you out of the gate. The second will be iterating, right? This will be from within a designer item or kind of within the designer experience itself. How do we make modifications and updates to your flows and rules from within a prompt itself, right? So you could pull up a prompt and say, hey, I want to make sure that my flow does X, Y, Z, and we can actually modify and help improve the flow steps themselves as you're going. And then the third is just some assistance things, again, things that just make your life a lot better. Think of it as the best example I have, and I don't know if this is good for you, Josh, but like the Clippy from the old Word days, right? Tools that let you just very quickly say, "Hey, are you trying to do this?" Or, "Hey, we can suggest a better way to do this." And I have a list of this in just a moment, but those are kind of the three categories of where we've slotted in some of these AI features. And I will say this is gonna impact all of our roadmaps. For the deployment server specifically, I'm going to be stealing a lot of these frameworks then to add features to deployment server, like summarizing commit details. So I can say, hey, Kirsten, over the past 30 days has made these 12 commits, and with that, here's the summary of the things she touched. She touched this flow 12 times, this flow 18 times, right? Do you want to email this out, right? That kind of AI experience of taking in a bunch of raw data and then summarizing it is what I'm going to use for deployment server. And Josh is laying the groundwork here for us to do this. So here's just a quick example of kind of some of the things you'll see. Like I said, being able to build the structures and things for forms and flows, forms and formulas and some rule types that we have, as well as modifying them directly. You're going to see those things come out with this AI kind of mass feature release. And then the assistant side of things, yeah, like setting up, and generating emails. One thing that I'm excited for, because I never do this, is like generate descriptions for like designer items. So if you pull up a flow and you have the big description box and your health score is like, hey, this is 0% because you never told me what this flow does, you can now use AI to interrogate the structure of the flow and give you a summary based on what we think the flow's doing, right? So just those sorts of things to help, document, give you feedback for, improve things on is really important here. And then the other one I'm excited about is like test and simulation data, right? If I've talked about this on several roadmap calls, but the ability to say pull up a flow and say, hey, generate me 10 test scenarios around this flow, and for it to know that it's got to go down certain paths and to generate, positive data and negative data or edge case data, we'll be able to do by leveraging AI within the tool. And I think that's again, I think that's also pretty cool. So, like I said, I'm not the expert on this, but I think it's fun, so I'm excited about it. If you do have questions specifically on any of the AI mass feature stuff, again, email us and Josh will be. I'm going to speak for him. I assume he'll be happy to talk to you, but should be no big deal. Only comment I got there was Clippy with a smiley face. Yeah, maybe that's dating myself a little bit, but um, I miss Clippy. Clippy was pretty fun. Oh, I forgot about this slide. Yeah. Um, this is the approach we're going to be taking for a lot of this. So just if you guys have any feedback here, this is interesting to you, right? For a lot of these things, when we're generating AI and involving that as part of your process, right? We want to make sure that the user is still involved in making intelligent decisions here, right? So we're not going to be, having things where it's just automatically updating your flow description and you look at it tomorrow and say, well, where did everything go? So the goal is here is we want to make sure that you can interact with sort of this generative experience and then see the results before you either approve or reject those sorts of changes, right? So when you say, here's my flow, generate description, you'll be able to pull up the summary, ask it for some changes, generate those changes, see the result. Nah, I don't like it, ask for some more. And then when you're happy with it, say approve or complete, and then it goes and actually does the work in the background. So this is the approach we'll be starting to take with most of these features. Hmm. All right. Um, that's it. I guess I said about 30 minutes. That was about 30. So I probably could go if you guys want to just talk deployment server, we could go for the full, 3 hours, but I don't think we want to bore everyone here. But yeah, please take a sec, post any questions you have in the question and answer or the chat. More than happy to answer them. Or again, like I said, if you prefer to ask us offline or independently of this, let us know. The next one of these, we're considering a couple different changes to this. I know we mentioned this last time as well. If you joined and we're like, well, hey, it's still on. But we're looking at a couple ways we could improve this experience for everyone, right? Like we want to make sure that the roadmap is constantly communicated and that you have a really good avenue to ask us questions and get feedback. But we're looking at what that may look like. So the only thing I'll say here is we're not sure exactly how this looks like. We're playing around with a couple ideas. This may come in the form of a recorded webinar with links to the survey back to us. We may be doing this more independently with some smaller groups of customers. But anyway, just know that keep an eye on your emails and events page for any new updates here. And we will let you know what the next steps are as far as keeping in touch with our product management team and what we're working on. All right, I think I've dotted enough. Don't see any questions, so again, I'll post the same contact page here. Please let us know if you have any questions, any feedback. Look out for that survey. I'm not kidding. I read them. Love your feedback, even if it's Eric's voice is annoying. Bring back Josh. Like, cool. I'll let Josh do all these from now on. But anything you got, please let us know. More than happy to accept that, and then reach out if there's any clarification. So. Yeah, without further ado, thank y'all. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and we may or may not see you in a couple weeks here, but hope you all take care. So, all right, everyone. See you.